Good morning. On behalf of the association, I would like to say a good welcome. And I am Dr. Khiangte. I am a sports medicine physician practicing in Mizoram. And sorry, due to some technical snacks, um, I could not get my PPT online, but then yes, I had to prepare like twice actually because first, priorly, I was preparing for that I would be addressing when you talk about the sports psychology, like there are two main perspectives. That is the sports clinical psychology and the sports educational psychology. When you talk about the sports clinical psychology, they are the persons who deal mainly on the individual basis of the hardship they face and as how a doctor and a patient would be. But when you talk about the sports psychology, educational wise, the sports psychology, that is on a broader perspective, uh, where where the psychologists deal with the team and broadens, how do you go about it eventually, but not exactly going into the clinical aspect. So that is the broad thing which we have to prior in hand. And as we know that since the beginning of civilization, what we ought to know is that there are more people living now than those who have ever died. I hope you're getting my point. Since the beginning of
Yes.
civilization till now, there are more people living today than those who have ever died. So that is one good challenge. And because of that, everybody wants to be number one. But only a few can reach the post of number one. So when the training schedule, the training period, the type of training which they have undergone, everyone, when they have done the same thing, but yet only 1 or 2% aspire to become the number one rankings, and the rest become number three, number four, number five. There comes a time when when there is a psychological effect on the persons who are not on top, so that they start becoming depressed, and that is when this sports psychology, especially as a clinical and educational purpose, they come into perspective. So, like I said, on this point of view, mm, taking into management background, I think there has to be a comparison of this Maslow's laws of hierarchy. That is, you know, the number one need is physiological need, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem status, and self-actualization status. And the self-actualization status is when you feel that you have acquired your desire, you have reached what you can attain, you have feel quite satisfied. Whereas complacency is, what do I say, is uncritical satisfaction where you know there's a room for improvement, but yet negatively you have satisfaction. That is where one should not have complacency. That is what I would like to say. And furthermore, talking to the subject of psychology, what I would like to say is, first of all, psychology is something, what I would say is that you have to understand how psychology affects the individual's performance, that is, to himself. And the second thing is how participation itself affects the person's psychology. So these are two different parameters. Like, for example, the first one, to understand how psychology affects the performance is, let's say, mm, a person has anxiety and he is very nervous. But then when he is made to run, so by running, he starts sweating, he starts, aggravating his hormones in such that, the running reduces the anxiety. That is the participation of understanding psychology how psychology affects performance. And for example, in this case, let's talk about COVID-19 crisis as of now, uh, you must have seen, especially in the Bundesliga, English Premier League, you see football players playing in their home ground without the fans. So there is no chanting of the home slogan or the crowd or whatever, how their typical home shouting has to be. In that sense, there is no sense of, the feeling of home crowd. So that additional advantage is not there. This is where you understand how psychology affects the performance. In the second part, understanding how participation affects the person's psychology, uh, let's say lack of self confidence would affect definitely the ability to shoot the arrow directly into the target, or, for example, in a basketball, person who is having anxiety would not be able to shoot properly into the target. So these are the one. These are the two crises of understanding psychology again, and yet again, based upon that, sports psychology again do undergo. You know, there are common. There are two common things which they undergo main problem. That is, the two main factors are the eating disorders and substance abuse disorders. These are the two main factors which sports clinical psychologists they often come across. And this eating disorders and substance abuse disorders is very much prevalent, especially among the elite classes. Let's say, for example, in history itself in football, we do have Paul Gascoigne, George Best, all these people, yes, and eating disorder, either anorexia nervosa or bulimia or whatever. For example, Lady Dinah, the late Lady Dinah, she herself had. So these are one issues again which are the things which we have to come across. And like I said, somehow the players, the participants, they do have the advantage since they are participating. So somehow with the involvement in game, they have the chances to suppress or whatever, take out their anger, anxiety, or nervousness or whatever psychological factors which affects them. But whereas when you talk about the coaches, these coaches they have the huge mental pressure without the capability of releasing their factors as compared to players. So this is one disadvantage, or rather, should I say, the competition and the toughness of being a coach, because they have to absorb it by themselves. They cannot play, they cannot sweat out. So that is one area where I should say that irrespective of the sports being played every day, um, coaches have more chance of developing complacency in comparison to the players. And yes, coming to how we do motivate players, there are certain conditions in which we could play and you know encourage the players to improve his psychological behavior. For example, first one would be the mental imagery or the mental rehearsal, where a person prior to his match, prior to the shots that he takes, imagines how that would be. Like for example, let's say you play a golf. You before you hit a shot, you imagine that you are going to hit a shot in such a way, you're going to swing in such a way, and imagine that that ball is going to exactly fall in the hole of that much you are hitting. Or in the other ways, mental, the mental imaginary would be, for example, let's say a ice skier. Um, Prior to starting of the event, they would know exactly at which point how the curves would be and how much they have to bend at what degree. So even before starting the skiing itself, they would mentally prepare and know where and when to bend, where to put a little bit of brakes. So that is one mental imaginary. So another example could be tennis. Before serving, imagine that you're going to serve at this speed, hit hard, and center it to the point of the tee level. So that is something called mental imagery or mental rehearsal. I had some good pictures in the PPT, but unfortunately, PPT cannot save me, so I have to somehow talk it out. Anyway, again, we do have another condition called progressive muscle relaxation, where in this point, the person needs to concentrate on some specific points of the muscles and contract, relax, such that they, the fatigue and whatever mental pressure they have, it helps them relax. And based upon how good they are in this progressive muscle relaxation, they can, go to another point of relaxation, should I say, that is called centering. And in this centering, it is one condition where your mental your mental thoughts would be so strong that all external all external distractions are blocked in such a way that you totally concentrate only on one specific area, and you do this concentration at one at a time. So this is almost hand in hand, this progressive muscle relaxation and then entering. So that is one part again, and then you have this routining also on the routine. In this routine, uh, it is based upon the individual, and it is also based upon the coach and the team management, wherein specific routines are given at a timetable in such that the body of the person becomes adapted to such that uh, they are not physically or mentally tortured. And specifically at that point of time, they are able to play at the maximum level. And again, positive self-talk in movies, or not in movies, should I say, in playgrounds, especially in tennis, badminton, yes, football. Yeah, yeah, adoptions.
No, can you be a little bit more audible? Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah, better,
yeah,
better
this
now.
positive talking, mm, you often see it more often in this singles game, like for example, let's say tennis, badminton, TT, and yes, of course, when in football a person is about to take a penalty shot or something like that, they have a positive talk in such way they push themselves, and you know, and again, the positive self-talk, which is very important, is here on a sprint issue. Let's say a 100-meter sprint or a 200-meter sprint. Prior to the game, apart from imagery and this centering, this positive self-talk for the burst events, these are very essentials, so that the adrenaline is pushed up more inside them. And then, lastly, should I say, it's goal setting. So this goal setting is almost like having a life hero or a life idol, should I say, almost in the same. You know, especially at this point of time when we have this COVID-19 lockdown, most of us would have gained, a few pounds. So when we want to get back to the game, we feel that we are a lot less fit than previously. So, we could have a goal setting that, at this point of time, at this week, I should lose this much pound in such that, I get back to my best. So that is when we have a goal setting, or mm, should I say, like, I should be able to be there. I should be able to play. That is the goal setting, which should come across. And then again, yeah, like I said, based upon goal setting, having a life hero or having a life idol, these are one of the areas where your dream would be an aspiration for yourself in such that you want to imitate somebody. So that is a life hero. That is what we have. And based upon this, let me come back to this progressive muscle relaxation. At this part, you know, here sometimes there's water floating tanks or recovery pump for matter. Here in a few years back, we purchased this recovery pump. They say it's good for draining the lymph and all those things, but I'm not very sure how scientifically that proves. But then, yes, did it have experience? It's quite relaxing. It, it's the same mechanism as that. Those days we used to have that shoe Reebok pump, which Michael Chang used to wear. The same mechanism. And yes, music and definitely sports massage. So these are one of the things which, a few things which I wanted to say. And yes, during play, uh, there is a process which has no scientific proof or anything, but then it really helps. And even I've tried it during my school days, teaching days, especially when I was playing tennis. That was, we call it a towel burst or a towel shout. You know, at some point of time when you are not able to play the strokes which you have been practicing so long, but then at the competition level, you're not able to execute it. You get frustrated and you try to do more. Either it goes out or it goes into net. You're so frustrated, but you can't help yourself. So the best part is, when there's a break, just take a big towel, cover your mouth, shout it out, shout it out. Really helps. So that is what I used to do. I mean, on a practical point of view, I'm just saying. Um, Lastly, what I would like to say is, um, as an Indian, we do have a very good advantage of this meditation, which really helps, especially to master this centering. So for sports, yes, meditation really helps. Unfortunately, government has made it, or unfortunately, government has made this yoga and all these things compulsory. Some people take it other ways, but then whatever the government has implemented, let's not take it in a negative sense, but then let's take the good out of it. So meditation really helps, and you may wonder that the other athletes around the world may not know meditation. Yes, they do, but the only thing is they don't meditate like that. But for example, let's say the Russian athletes, yes, especially the elite athletes, they are taken to the shores of Lake Baikal, where it's almost frozen throughout the year. They meditate at the shore of the Lake Baikal in such a way that when they remove their shirts and their pants, they are just in their drawers. They don't feel cold or anything because their sense of sensation, their sense of their meditational sense has taken them up to a next level. So their concentration is so strong. So that is one advantage they have, and especially this meditation at you know elite level would really help. Especially like what, for example, let's say badminton. It's a very tense game. The other person has a match point, and you are serving. So at that point of time, the mental strength really counts. So I that is what I could say on what I've prepared because very unfortunately my PPT could not support me.